this talk is about the Consolation of Philosophy, which was a book done a very long time ago. The Consolation is a scholarly work that's been around a long time.
Saint Athanasius Manlius Severinus Boethius is writing a book, The Consolation of Philosophy, because he is on house arrest in 475 AD. Boethius in the Consolation was in prison, writing this book to calm him while pondering losing his fortune. He needs to detach from the situation, which is what Lady Philosophy is doing, so he can remember. Lady Philosophy is reminding him of the motherly care she put in him. Saint Augustine. Somebody is known for the prayer, God give chastity, but not yet. He was well aware of the feeling of Boethius. All Augustine is talking about sexual sins. These actions can be overindulgence. Not taking care of the body is why the mind of Boethius has gotten sick.
So you see, the not taking in the body is why he got sick, and that's one of the first things that a Lady Philosophy does, is comes to him and reminds him who he was, and that is why Lady Philosophy is Lord Krishna of the Bhagavad Gita, and like this ancient Hindu text tells Arjuna, our true self is being with God and staying with the yoga practice, which is not just physical, it is also mental. Lady Philosophy is essentially telling him to focus on God. When you focus on your Dharma or gifts from the Holy Spirit, you will become enlightened. So, even though this is taking place in northern Italy, and he would be aware of some of the Hindu texts, and that would, but to focus on God and focusing on
what sweetness the stimulus of pleasure may have I do not know, but that the issues pleasure are painful everyone may understand who chooses to recall the memory of his own fleshly lust. Nay, if these can make happiness, there is no reason why the beasts also should not be happy, since all their efforts are eagerly set upon satisfying the bodily wants. Animals eat every organic human's poison.
So reminding him that he's a flesh and you're on earth, but you have to do right action, like the Bhagavad Gita is saying, the right action of everything. And Augustine is writing the same way of focusing on God. Now, none of these saints are talking about walking or anything.
Boethius is leaving his wife to care for his estate. One would assume the community believes Boethius is guilty of something, or he would not be arrested. Lady Philosophy is reminding Boethius of this when she says the wife yet lives, with her gentle disposition, her peerless modesty and virtue, this the epitome of all her graces, that she is the true daughter of her sire. She lives to say for the sake only, preserves the breath of life through she loves it, and pines away in grief and tears for the absence wherein if in naught else I would allow some marrying of the felicity. Women had to get married or become a desert mother or nun. In Hindu, goddess called Parvati, who was a lover of Lord Shiva. Parvati was human for a time and was essential, told woman don't teachers in her human lifetime. Over Parvati human lifetime she was harassed for being outspoken. This eventually lead to being attacked by a rock and raped. Lord Shiva went and rescue Parvati. Lord Shiva made every womb barren, no children were being born. The gods of Hindu tradition felt this was a harsh tradition and pleaded to Lord Shiva to stop. War broke out. It took goddess Kali to merge. Women had eggs or men had semen that worked. Hopefully, since men abused women, Lord Shiva was compassionate to females about their menstrual cycle when this event occurred. was restored by Lord Shiva, and minimal suffering was what human had again. Both Isis would hope his wife was safe, and her safety was what Lady Philosophy had to remind him of completing duties to his wife. Sticking to yoga philosophy laid out in the Bhagavad Gita is what is important in that text. Focusing on God and being careful with your body, with your action.
So the Our Lady Philosophy is coming down and telling him these things, everything she is illustrating. Each song is different, and each song seems to be saying something different. So that's what's confusing about it. Maybe this makes more sense, but
Do possessions take care that helps you not focus on God's will, to teach children, to teach other people, to pass on the knowledge, pass on the sacred traditions? The Bhagavad Gita says the man of yoga should practice concentration alone in mastering mind and body, free up possessions and desires. Consultations of Philosophy says possessions are something people are willing to steal and kill for, and that is why having too much is a burden. When ruin was overtaking the fortunes of the proud provincials through the combined pressure of private rapine in public taxation, I agreed no less than the suffers. PG 7. The soul on the inside cannot be taken away. The duty to caesars can increase and increase, but the time spent with God will always value the same. Children are the greatest treasure, of which we have no possession.
so our possessions are a burden to us sometimes, but usually when you're males or females, usually end up giving everything away. So how much possessions do you, at the time it's almost like an allocation of possessions that you don't know where your possessions are going to go, or what they're for. You have old cars, you got too many cars, you give them away. You got too many things and you give them away. And this is where the things are, where the anchorists had no possessions and weren't even allowed to wash their clothes. And that's what we're thinking about. The anchoress was sealed in a part of the church as if she was dead. There was no light, and if she had company, it was through a squinting window that was extremely small. And the anchoress would only speak to the bishop if she was asked a question. The anchoress, if the anchoress was doing spiritual direction, the spiritual direction had to be focused, like extreme focus. And if it veered off into the recent novel of the day, that question can't be answered. It had to be asking another question. The anchoress pretty much lives in a cardboard box, a refrigerator box, and could not move. She could have servants, and these servants, were there to help her, but they did not touch her. She wasn't allowed to be touched by anybody after being enclosed. She had to be just spiritual prayer, and her clothes weren't even supposed to be washed. They were to be shaken out as needed. The anchorists would be praying these prayers that in connection with Christ, that she was married to Christ, like nuns who get to see the world, like the Little Sisters of the Poor, who get to see the world, and nuns like Nuns for Pro-Life, or a Carmelite nun. The anchorists were helped by the Dominican order, and the Dominican order helped them. The anchorists were married to Jesus. So the Anchoress life were married to Jesus, and this is what is happening here. And it's very hard to imagine by our standards today what is happening, because the church is allowing people to be too much pain. The Anchorists lived without the senses. So sometimes they were blind, and sometimes they had the senses, but they were trying not to use them. The sense of smell was something they had to get used to. They had somebody helping them remove the things you can't go away with, having to pee in a bucket, use bowel movements in a bucket, and they had people helping them. So you have your eyes, you have your nose, you have your sense of touch, you have your taste. Everything you have, your hearing, your senses are there to help you, but they distract you from focusing on God. I think that it just should have been important to make a mental note that the senses, like telling if food went bad, if you eat bad food, you make yourself sick. So then you make yourself sick, then you can't serve God. You don't hear somebody coming after you, then you die and you don't live as long. You can't serve God. So you're tasting things like tasting something has sugar in it, and you can't have sugar because you're diabetic. Stuff like that. And then, so the senses are important. So it's kind of not good pastoral care to say don't use your senses. I don't know what these bishops are really thinking, unless they were doing something on the side, like go check out the freak show Anchoress, at the little building there. Oh, there's a $25 fee to check out the freak show. So I just think that's bizarre, but that's by today's standard, not by their standard. So that's what I think about the Anchorists at this point. So yeah, you see that they do a lot of weird stuff, these Anchorists. And is it for the glory of God or for profit? You really never know. So that's what in the Anchorists, Julian Norwich and other Anchoresses are imagining themselves being at the foot of the cross. One woman is Mary Salome, which is a very confusing person. She is actually the aunt of Jesus. In one story, she is the woman who visited Jesus when she thought she was going to visit Jesus, and Jesus had already risen. And the angel told him that the person you're looking for is not there. Mary Salome, it just seems to be still a Catholic saint, but is more honored in other churches. So it is very confusing to study her. And if you ask for women to be more part of the church, as that we always know is the women who do all the work, and guys just fantasize about it, which was a saying by Saint Eve. No, that was it was Dorothy Day. It was a blessed saint now. Was that said that women see things in the fantasy, or men see things in the fantasy, and guys and women do right action. So that's what everybody really knows, what's really up. And that if you combine Edith Stein together, where Edith Stein is talking about educating women, and then you understand that in the Baha'i faith, one of the fastest growing religions, they actually have rules that educate women. So it's very what's going on here. So you have Mary Solomon, Mary Magdalene, Mary Mother of God, so, and how, who are the anchoresses imagining themselves being when they are praying in their spiritual exercises. So the connection to the Bhagavad Gita was there, that the right action is what people are supposed to be doing. And so, it's strange to make these other religions demonic, but they're the same. But that's what everything is about, control. The point of knowledge is to have empowerment of all beings, regardless of gender. So there really shouldn't be any male empowerment or female empowerment. It should be, how do you empower a whole human race? The empowerment of all beings, how to preserve the planet from the shy male or the female who has intellectual disabilities that need to be overcome, which require diversified ways to overcome these individual needs of the autistic female, who often gets overlooked and not even believed to be part of the society. And the overweight human, male or female, what people look like. If you're darker skin or light skin, the darker skin Italian, darker skin anything that is human, any human. A white person with a British accent sometimes gets coveted. A tall-legged blonde needs empowerment, and a red-haired female, the same as a 300-pound female with no hair. All beings, have souls, and it does not happen. It must extend to the animals, because without the animals, without the horses, the war dogs, the horses, and all that fought in all these wars, the camels, everything we had, we can't do it without the animals either. We eat some animals. If we hadn't eaten the animals to begin with, we wouldn't know what the Beyond Meat tastes like, or what our Beyond Meat goal was. So maybe in the future we can save more animals, but our taste buds need to be altered for this Beyond Meat, and the idea of buffalo wings with no meat buffalo wings, cauliflower buffalo wings, so we can help the animals down the road, but, and don't breed animals to eat, but if we have extra animals, I mean, I guess if they're going to die, then that's a little bit better off. You shouldn't overfish anything. So I think that an overabundance between the two books, the Anchoress hardly has anything. She has to ask permission to write, where Constellation, we don't know how many rolled up piece of paper this guy had. Still, it's an overabundance. He probably, I still don't really believe that Saint Severus was starving to death, asking, or anything. I think that he was fine. This whole lady philosophy could have been hallucinogenic drug, so it could have been Timothy Leary's mushrooms. It could have been anything. So we hoped, in our hopes, that it was the the fiat, the mother of God. We hope that it was a great, great saint. It could have been Saint Cecilia. So anyway, empowerment. So the theme of the two is empowerment. If if Lady Philosophy empowered the Boethius, he would remember himself and not go into despair. The Anchoress needs to do repetitive prayer so she doesn't go into despair. But the praying without ceasing, but doing, maybe the Anchoress should have cleaned the church, but they were just in there. So I don't know if they did or not. No, and no others fixed may save with the appointed joins the end to the beginning in a steady cycle spinning. Song 2 of the book we're studying. I think maybe sometimes we're in too much of a cycle that we never know how to get out of. Like when you volunteer at the Catholic Church and you don't know how to resign. You've been doing something for so long, but you don't know how to resign or what's going to happen when it's gone. These cycles that we don't know. You wake up every morning, you go to McDonald's, you have hash browns. You always have to have 2 hash browns and the sandwiches, but you don't know how it's going to affect your health down the road. High cholesterol in sausage and high cholesterol in the potatoes, and how this will affect your studying, affect you getting closer to God, and these cycles that are spinning around. And so maybe he wasn't meant to be a Roman statesman. Maybe I think he's pondering things. He's pondering other. Did he ever ponder other vocations? He knew that this consolation of philosophy was his magnus opus, and Dante wrote something that we're still studying today. How many people are we going to study J.K. Rowling today? In 100 years? But you wonder, Severus Snape, one of the anti-heroes in J.K. Rowling, which The Devil in Paradise Lost is an anti-hero. This is so. Can we say that Saint Severus is an anti-hero? So the anti-hero, he was actually charged with doing something bad. But he was good. So the society around him thought he was evil, but he was good. He was sticking up for people. The idea, we're not really sure what he was sticking up for, but charged with treason, really? So, what is evil? Is the question of this. What is the evil to do it, to be evil? Whether then cannot make it possessor, independent and free of all want, yet this was what it seemed to promise. Moreover, I think this also well deserves to be considered, that there is nothing in the special nature of money to hinder is being taken away from those who possess it's against its will. So the money, there's nothing wrong with it because you need to donate it to a cause like the cause that is the Buddy Walk, which is all over the world, but our Buddy Walk is called the Railroad Beach Buddy Walk. So who better to manage the money than somebody in the Down syndrome community and manage it that way. So how money in itself, it helps people, but yes, you spend your Friday paycheck, by Monday, and you got to go again, and what does that money have done for you? So possessing it, but knowing it is to give away, is, I think, what song 3 is about. So as we're saying that the Gita comes in a lot of songs, and the Consolation of Philosophy comes in a lot of songs, and that is what's happening. This came out too long. It's just... Is there male and female, and why is this important when you're worshiping God? God is coming from the sky, but we always say there's sister moon and brother sun, and then it's Mother Earth, and these symbols that we think about, where Julian Norwich is believing God is the mother, that Jesus is the mother, is nothing wrong with that, because also Jesus is the Father. He comes from the Father, and he says it multiple times that he's come from the Father. But where the angst is, people, if your goal is to, spread the gospel, then don't hinder it, because God is saying love. Goddess is saying love. Goddess is love, maternal love, fraternal love. There is when the love is given, there is no gender. And this is what we have to remember from all this. When the love is given, there is no gender. So that's what we have to strengthen ourselves in. All are welcome at the table. The table of plenty. And that's what we're supposed to learn from this. God is mother. So that's what I get from the Anchorist. Why would Consolation of Philosophy have a lady philosophy? Isn't there a male philosophy? So a Lord of Philosophy? Where's the Lord of Philosophy? If everything has to be all female and all male, there should be a Lord of Philosophy and a Lady of Philosophy. And but you see the attributes in Lady Philosophy, that she can whip out some male traits and, shooing people away right from the very beginning of the book. She's shooing everybody away, being aggressive, male, So these potions, what are they doing? These potions are going to hurt him, Western medicine, so it was all a bunch of Western medicine coming at Boethius from the very beginning. Science that was about how to make a buck. How can those Roman doctors make a buck? So it wasn't about really healing. So they didn't go to the root. In Ayurveda practicing, you go to the root cause of it. What is the root cause? It's the food you're eating that's giving you acne. It's your dosha. It's your bloating. That's what all this stuff is. And so you love somebody, and loving somebody is not merely making a buck all the time. And I think that the mother. So why does the patriarchy still in these Byzantines, Roman Catholics, all these churches, Eastern churches, the East and the West, are, why aren't there female priests? Why there are deaconesses in some churches, but if they all want to be connected, do they all have to be alike, or they all should accept something? What is that philosophy? It isn't. It's about control. It isn't about love, and God is love, and so Goddess is the mother, God is the father, but love is the energy that's coming out. So it's genderless. So that's what I think you get from Anchorus, that the authors and the many contributors, writers to this was doing. What you get from Severus, Boethius, is sticking to the philosophy that is what we have to stick with. And then, you need somebody so the philosophy is the talk therapy within it, I guess, too, because St. Severus needed the talk therapy, a lay philosophy, so to get through this. His wife was taking care of the estate. So that's what's going on with this. So continuing on with this talk, and what we're trying to accomplish with the talk is get your journey through the constellation of philosophy and the ancient. So we're trying to get this going. I guess the thought about repetitive prayer is that we should be praying the prayers if we're trying to get back to the beginning, as time. God doesn't have time. He has time, but he's outside time. If we're trying to get back to the beginning, then repetitive prayer doesn't matter so much, as long as everything you're doing is focusing on God. Yes, I think that you can wear yourself out. This is what was taught during my RYT 200, RYT 300 training. That's going to be 500 something hour yoga teacher, is that we pray silently these prayers. So really, that's where the rub is. I think that in Catholicism they're getting it wrong, because you should be praying the rosary in your head. You should be praying now the anchors don't have the rosary yet. They're not. They got two. They got like 50 years or something. The last anchors doesn't quite have the rosary yet, from what I was trying to figure out. The Our Father was because the prayers Jesus taught. The Apostle Creed, I don't think the Nicene Creed was finalized, but so the prayers that Jesus taught, and these antiphons, everything that is said that seems repetitive are things that the early church fathers had come up with, and we've been doing since year 200. So everything. So if you say God is outside time, then that's a lot of Hare Krishna chants. That are the daily mass that are repetitive. So if we're calling to Krishna, and he's against repetitive prayer, I guess he would have lightning bolted us by now. So that argument is irrelevant. So that's I don't like how they treated these Anchorus women. It kind of ticks me off a lot of things in the church tick me off. Roman Catholic Church, other than East and West, it seems like we're functioning off. Well, St. John Paul II said, we had a lung, so we're missing one lung. I mean, what the heck? That's where the constellation of philosophy, St. Severus comes in, because it seems like the Great Schism didn't happen yet, but it was definitely that language that really got jacked up. Why speak all this stuff that it's like if somebody comes up with a science fiction language and really goes out there and talks it, or an Elvish, it just does. It's going to confuse people. It makes people mad, and that's what the problem is. Not that we always. You should take this time to learn somebody's culture, but that's where the problem is. So so repetitive prayer is okay as long as the energy you're focusing on goes to God. So repetitive prayer was mentioned in the Anchorus. The Anchorus wakes up every day and prays the same prayer. So repetitive. Okay, so repetitive prayer. The early church fathers had come up with, and we've been doing for repetitive prayer year 200. So 5. Shall we then deem them truly blessed, whom such perfum have great? When good things happen, we are blessed. Just because bad things happen does not mean that God loves us less. And this is what we have to remember, that when we don't feel blessed, we don't feel like we're doing good, we're not going to do good. And we feel like a bad person, we're going to do worse things. So everybody feels the presence around you of being blessed. So we must continue in the blessings of Yahweh, and continue the blessings of the Great Spirit, and continue in the blessings. And that's where the Anchorus, seems like they're self-punishing themselves, and I don't think we were supposed to do that. So, just continue in the blessings, do the best you can, and just be blessed. So, in conclusion, the constellation of philosophy is connected to the Anchorus because you have to do your physical prayer, you have to garden, you have to move, but everything has to be a prayerful meditation, like the yoga practice, like the Bhagavad Gita is telling us that the Bhagavad Gita says the right action. So you have the right action, that something happens that, well, for one thing, the Anchorists are put in jail cells. Now, Jesus talks about visiting the people in prison and how they're the most vulnerable population. So why did the largest loving, quote unquote, loving church, which is only a intrinsically evil bureaucracy, that would engage people? And why would this church in 2020 molest children? So this church that is evil, can do good, but it needs the right people in charge, like letting the priests getting married, having the deaconesses, having the oversight. But the oversight becomes the hindrance in 2020, that they don't do anything at all anymore. They're lazy and probably, but the summary is focusing on the philosophy, focusing on the ways of the cross, focusing on saying the rosary today, and focusing on the biblical teachings of the rosary, the biblical teachings of the 5 wounds of Christ, and which the 5 wounds of Christ are that Jesus was nailed to the cross here, and Jesus was nailed to the cross here. These are 2 wounds. His feet were put together like this. That's 2 wounds, 3 nails, 4 wounds now. Then he was stabbed by the Roman soldier. The meditation is that you focus on one arm, and then you eye gaze the one arm, and then you eye gaze the other arm, and then the feet and the side, and you focus on and this is just one example of one practice. The Apostle Creed is one example of one practice. It's supposed to be meditative. Meditative. And sometimes, it's okay to say these Apostle Creeds silently, and the Our Father silently, keeping within the limits of 15th century. So keeping within the limits of the 1450 century of the Anchorists or such, that keeping in the limits and focus on the philosophy, studying the early church fathers, keeping on the philosophy, but obviously the body needs to exercise because it needs to burn metabolism. So yeah, you can sit there like a Buddhist monk way too much and not. You need to do walking Buddha prayers. So focusing on what the philosophy you believe in, focus on God, do charity outside of prayer, and that's it.